DaneBlaise Flashback. A young adult romantic thriller. By Stephanie Queen. 1. I've always been DaneBlaise, which means I've always been looked at with a mix of apprehension and awe by most people. I was 14 years old when I first made a mental note of this, and decided to embrace it. Capitalize on it. Run all the way to hell with it. "What the hell do you know, kid?" the older boy said. Or I assumed he was older since he was standing out in front of the high school. I didn't like him on sight. I just mentioned to him that classes were generally held inside the building. I'd been on my way home from a half-day in 8th grade. It was another surfing day in Southern California. I stopped walking. We were about the same height, but he probably had a few pounds on me. I was alone. The brainiac stood with 3 other boys, one shorter, one scrawnier, and one fat. None of them seemed anxious to improve their minds through a high school education. The brains of the pack took a drag on his cigarette, another reason I didn't like him, and after he puffed some smoke in my direction, he spat on the ground between us. About 3.5 feet. I almost wish he spat at me. It would have been my excuse to punch him. I stood perfectly still, but I was tense with a strong urge to mess this guy up. I have no idea what got to me, or why. Or I had no idea at the time. The short boy laughed. I kept my eyes on shit for brains, but I could see the short kid's jeering grin in my periphery. The other 2 boys moved in closer. I didn't move. Not even a muscle twitch. I concentrated on the hand with the cigarette and the mouth. And the teeth inside the mouth. I wanted to knock them out. It's not that I was a violent kid. I wasn't. It's not that I looked for trouble, or that I didn't realize they could gang up on me. My mother would have screamed in horror if she'd seen me. I didn't worry about any of that. All I knew was something about this kid was bothering me bad. "You like getting beat up, kid? Or are you just plain stupid?" the brain said. I assumed it was a rhetorical question, and didn't answer. Kept my eye on his face and his hand with the cigarette. Kept the others in sight. Kept my tension to myself. "I don't know about this kid, Dag. He's something," the skinny kid said. I wanted to smile. But I didn't. I knew they were up to no good. I didn't know how I knew, and I didn't know what they'd done, but I didn't question my instinct. The brain snorted. "He's gonna be something broken in a minute. Soon as I finish this butt." The others snickered. I noticed the skinny kid shift back a step. My respect went up a notch. But it was still lower than the curb. They expected me to run scared. I spread my legs and folded my arms across my chest. The brain laughed and shook his head. Then he threw his butt in the grass. The others tensed. He looked me in the eye. That's when I saw it. The hesitation. The flicker of a question in his eyes. That was all I needed. I lashed one hand out to block his, then whipped my left leg up and caught him squarely in the face with my foot. The brainiac went down, and his friends jumped back in a stupor. If I'd been wearing boots, there would have been teeth raining on the pavement. As it was, there was a lot of blood splattered on my sneakers. I spun to a stop and stood, hands across my chest again, and stared the others down. I focused on the scrawny kid. He stared back. The other 2 helped lift their brainy leader to his feet. He looked dazed and he was swearing, but he wasn't coming after me. Probably had a broken nose. "What the hell are you?" the scrawny kid said. "Some kind of ninja?" I figured this was another rhetorical question. The fat kid said, "Let's get Dag out of here. Shit, he's bleeding everywhere." The scrawny kid stood planted while the other 2, half carrying Dag, started toward a nearby car illegally parked at the curb. "Come on. Are you crazy? We can't let anyone catch us. We need to get out of here. That snapped the scrawny kid from his trance. He broke eye contact and turned. As he walked away, in no hurry, he turned and said, "I'm going to find out about you, kid." I didn't move, but I smiled. He stopped. And he smiled back. "I like you," he said. "You are the spunkiest badass kid I ever met." I didn't credit his observation at the time, because who was he? I turned to walk across the street. One thing, Ninja Boy. The scrawny kid stood outside the door of the car's driver's side. I didn't stop, but he must have figured I was listening. "You never saw us." The car door slammed. I stopped. I couldn't help it. A cold chill I can still remember rushed through me. I turned around as they pulled away and zeroed in on the license plate. I barely caught it. The car didn't leave rubber, but they didn't waste time driving off. The undeniable sense of foreboding came over me and never left. I knew something was wrong, that they'd done something wrong, and I don't mean that they skipped class. I had to find out what it was, and I had to do something about it. The fact that I was a 14-year-old kid never registered as a problem. At least not to me. I jogged home and made a call.